Ask any group of riders what the best motorcycle is, and you'll start a fight. Best for what? Best at being expensive? Best at sitting in your garage because you're too scared to drop it? The truth is, every manufacturer makes at least one bike that nails what they're actually good at. So instead of pretending one formula works for everyone, here's the best bike from 12 major manufacturers. And yes, some of these picks are going to make you mad. We're counting down from 12 to 1 based on how well each bike represents what that brand does better than anyone else. Starting at number 12, Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650. Royal Enfield's premium cruiser runs a 648cc parallel twin, making 47 horsepower and 52 foot-pounds of torque. The 1500mm wheelbase and cruiser geometry deliver highway stability without demanding expert-level skill at parking lot speeds. You've got enough torque for confident passing at 70 miles per hour, enough planted feel to stay comfortable on 4-hour highway runs, and enough approachability that low-speed maneuvering doesn't require constant vigilance. The 15.7-liter tank gives you decent range before you're hunting for gas stations. Your back doesn't hurt after 4 hours. Your wrists aren't numb. The cruiser geometry holds steady on highways without demanding constant input to keep the bike tracking straight. It's what Royal Enfield does well. Approachable power, comfort-first ergonomics, and ownership costs that won't make you regret buying it when something needs maintenance. If you're chasing top-end acceleration or track day bragging rights, skip this entirely. But if you want a substantial cruiser that feels confident on highways without requiring expert-level skill to manage at low speeds, this is Royal Enfield's best answer. It's not the most powerful 650 platform out there. It's just the one that makes the most sense for riders who value steady torque and all-day comfort over spec sheet numbers. 11th on the list, Indian Challenger Elite. Indian spent years building baggers to directly challenge Harley's touring dominance, and the Challenger Elite is where all that effort landed. The Power Plus 112 engine makes 122 horsepower and 128 foot-pounds of torque. When you need to move around slower traffic or merge into fast-moving lanes, the power is there without requiring you to plan 3 exits ahead. The Elite trim is where Indian loads the premium features. Adaptive ride height, upgraded suspension that actually adjusts to road conditions instead of just existing as a marketing bullet point, and enough integrated tech to make long-distance rides less exhausting. The downside is weight. This is an 800-pound-plus machine that requires low-speed confidence and parking lot awareness. If you're not comfortable managing that kind of mass when you're rolling at 5 miles per hour, this bike will intimidate you. But for experienced riders who want a premium American V-twin bagger without defaulting to Harley, the Challenger Elite delivers. It handles highway miles with planted stability, the fairing cuts wind effectively, and the power plant has enough character to feel special without being agricultural. This makes sense if you're logging serious distance and want modern touring capability with traditional cruiser soul. It doesn't make sense if you're new to big bikes or mostly riding short urban trips. Number 10. Harley-Davidson Road Glide. 3 hours into an interstate run, wind buffeting starts mattering more than horsepower specs. The Road Glide's shark nose fairing isn't just aesthetic, it's functional. It channels wind around you instead of straight into your chest, which means you're not fighting to hold your head steady at 80 miles per hour. The Milwaukee 8 117 makes 105 horsepower and 130 foot-pounds of torque, and what matters is how that torque feels when you roll the throttle from 60 to 90. It's immediate and linear, just smooth forward shove. The 12.3-inch touchscreen and Bluetooth integration work as advertised, which is rare enough to mention. Ride modes actually change throttle response in ways you notice. The tech doesn't feel like an afterthought bolted onto an old platform. Harley figured out how to integrate modern electronics without losing the core V-twin character people buy these bikes for. The trade-off is size and weight. This is not a bike for tight city filtering or cramped parking situations. Low-speed maneuvering requires confidence and upper body strength. If your daily routine involves dense urban stops and tight spaces, you'll hate it. But if you're covering real distance on highways and back roads, the Road Glide is Harley's most complete modern bagger. It's comfortable, stable, and powerful enough to handle everything except tight technical riding. Coming in at number 9, Aprilia RSV 4 Factory 1100. 220 horsepower in a street-legal superbike sounds great until you actually use it and realize that cracking the throttle at 40 miles per hour in second gear will put the front wheel in the air, whether you planned for it or not. The 1099cc 65-degree V4 makes 161.8 kilowatts at 13,000 RPM and 93.7 foot-pounds of torque at 10,800. What that translates to on real roads is acceleration that feels violent even when you're trying to be smooth. The factory spec comes with Öhlins electronically controlled suspension, which isn't a luxury feature. It's the system that keeps all that power from overwhelming the chassis when you're hard on the gas mid-corner. Without it, you'd be managing traction and chassis composure manually, which gets exhausting fast. Aprilia's racing development shows up in how planted the bike stays at high speeds and how much front-end feedback you get when you're pushing hard through fast sweepers. The trade-off is everything that comes with owning a bike at this performance level. Tires wear fast. Insurance costs reflect the superbike classification. Maintenance intervals are tight if you're riding it the way Aprilia intended. This makes sense for experienced riders who want a V4 superbike with full electronic chassis control and actual track capability. It doesn't make sense if you're looking for something comfortable, practical, or cheap to run. This is Aprilia's flagship superbike answer, not their easiest bike to live with. 8th on the list, KTM 1390 Super Duke R Evo. The difference between horsepower and torque matters when you find yourself pulling an unintentional wheelie in third gear, just because you rolled the throttle a little too enthusiastically. The 1350cc LC 8V twin makes 190 horsepower and 145 newton meters of torque. That torque figure is what gets you in trouble. It hits hard in the mid-range and doesn't let up, which means throttle discipline isn't optional. The Evo trim adds semi-active WP suspension that adjusts on the fly based on road conditions and riding intensity. Is it worth the premium? If you're riding aggressively enough to compress the suspension hard under braking and acceleration, yes. If you're cruising at 65 miles per hour on smooth highways, probably not. The bike weighs 200 kilograms dry, 212 fully fueled with the 17.5-liter tank full. That weight disappears once you're moving, but at parking lot speeds, you'll feel every kilogram. Running costs stack up quickly. Rear tires at this power level don't last long if you're using the throttle. Insurance reflects the hyper-naked classification. Fuel economy drops fast when you're riding the way KTM built this bike to be ridden. This is for experienced riders who want maximum Street Fighter intensity and have the skill to manage that much torque without getting hurt. It's not for new riders, budget-conscious owners, or anyone who values calm predictability over adrenaline. Number 7. Triumph Street Triple 765 RS. Comparing middleweight nakeds to leader bikes misses the point. The question isn't whether you need more power, it's whether you'll actually use what you've got. The 765cc inline triple makes 128 horsepower and 59 foot-pounds of torque. That power lives in a usable rev range where you're not constantly shifting to stay in the power band. You can roll the throttle at 4,000 RPM in third gear and get immediate forward thrust without waiting for the engine to wake up. The triple-cylinder character gives you more personality than an inline 4 without the lumpy low end of a twin. Triumph developed this engine architecture for Moto 2 racing, which means it's responsive when you need it and doesn't punish you with abrupt power delivery when you're riding in traffic. The RS spec adds premium suspension and better brakes, which you'll notice on fast back roads where the bike needs to change direction quickly and scrub speed hard before corners. This works as a one-bike solution if you commute during the week and ride aggressively on weekends. It's comfortable enough for daily use without being boring, fast enough for track days without being unusable on public roads. The downside is wind protection. Long highway runs get tiring without a fairing. If you're logging serious interstate miles or need maximum weather protection, this isn't the right tool. But for mixed-use riding where you want one bike that feels special every time you ride it, this is Triumph's best answer. Number 6. Kawasaki Ninja ZX-6R. Most manufacturers killed their middleweight supersports because they stopped selling. Kawasaki kept building the ZX-6R anyway, which tells you something about how committed they are to the platform. The 636cc inline 4 makes 127 horsepower at 13,000 RPM and 52.1 foot-pounds of torque at 10,800. That extra displacement over a true 600 gives you more mid-range punch without jumping straight to leader bike intensity, which matters when you're riding public roads, where staying in the power band means constantly working the gearbox. The Supersport ergonomics are aggressive. Your weight is forward over the tank, your wrists carry load, and your knees are tucked tight. If you're stuck in stop-and-go traffic, this gets uncomfortable fast. The bike makes sense when you're riding hard on fast roads, where the riding position puts you in control and the chassis feels sharp and responsive. It doesn't make sense when you're commuting through dense city traffic at 20 miles per hour for 40 minutes. High-rev inline-4 character means the power lives at the top of the range. You'll spend time between 8,000 and 13,000 RPM when you're using the bike properly, which is fun when you're attacking corners and exhausting when you're just trying to get somewhere. Insurance costs reflect the Supersport classification. If you want a true middleweight Supersport that's still current and supported by a major manufacturer, this is one of the last options standing. If you want something more practical, buy a naked bike. Fifth on the list, Suzuki GSX S1000. $11,900 for a liter class naked making 150 horsepower sounds too cheap until you ride it and realize Suzuki just didn't add the markup everyone else charges. The 999cc inline-4 is derived from GSX-R architecture, which means proven reliability, known service intervals, and parts availability. You're not gambling on experimental engineering. You're getting an engine platform that's been running in superbikes for years, with the aggressive ergonomics swapped for an upright riding position. Suzuki added a 5-inch full-color TFT display for 2025, which proves this isn't a forgotten model getting minimal updates. The bike has ride modes and traction control that actually work instead of just existing in the menu. The Suzuki Intelligent Ride System adjusts throttle response and traction intervention based on which mode you select, and you'll notice the difference when you switch between them. The downside is wind protection. This is a naked bike at liter displacement, which means highway fatigue is real on longer runs. Your chest takes the wind blast at 75 miles per hour. Your neck gets tired holding your head steady. If you're covering serious interstate distance regularly, you'll want a fared sport tourer instead. But for aggressive backroad riding and occasional highway use, the GSX-S 1000 delivers liter bike performance at a price that undercuts most competitors by thousands. It's the best value in the naked liter class if you don't need touring comfort or premium suspension components. Number 4. Yamaha MTO9 SP. You're 40 miles from home on a twisty back road and you realize you haven't thought about the bike once. You've just been riding it, which is exactly what Yamaha was aiming for with the CP3 platform. The 890cc inline triple makes 117 horsepower and 68 foot-pounds of torque. That torque curve is what makes the difference. You get immediate throttle response from 4,000 RPM without waiting for the revs to climb, which means you're spending less time managing gears and more time just riding. The triple-cylinder character sits between an inline-4 and a twin. More personality than a 4 without the lumpy low-end power delivery of a twin. Yamaha calls it Masters of Torque, which sounds like marketing until you feel how the mid-range punch works when you're accelerating out of second gear corners. The power is there when you need it, without requiring you to wring the engine out to 13,000 RPM every time you want to pass someone. The SP spec adds better suspension and upgraded brakes, which you'll notice when you're pushing hard on imperfect pavement. The suspension stays composed when the road surface gets rough mid-corner. The brakes give you confidence when you need to scrub speed hard before tight turns. This works as a one-bike solution for riders who commute weekdays and attack weekends. Wind protection is limited compared to fared bikes, so long highway runs get tiring. But for mixed-use riding where you want character and engagement instead of calm neutrality, this is Yamaha's best answer. Coming in third, BMW M1000RR. 189 miles per hour top speed requires more than just horsepower. It requires wind tunnel time, aerodynamic testing, and engineering budgets most manufacturers won't spend on street bikes. BMW spent the money. The M1000RR gets race homologation winglets and bodywork shaped to reduce drag at speeds you'll probably never see on public roads. The question is whether you're paying for functional aero or just expensive decoration. The Shift Cam Inline-4 makes 205 horsepower. Variable valve timing means the power delivery stays usable across the rev range instead of just dumping everything at redline. You get strong mid-range pull and top-end scream in the same engine, which matters when you're riding fast roads where you can't always downshift 3 gears to access peak power. The bike weighs 423 pounds wet, which disappears once you're moving, but gets noticeable when you're muscling it around tight parking lots. This is a homologation special built to qualify for racing and sold to street riders who'll never race it. The suspension is track spec stiff, the riding position is aggressive enough to hurt your wrists on long rides. Insurance costs reflect the M designation and 200 horsepower output. Consumables wear fast if you're using the performance envelope. You're paying BMW money for BMW engineering, which means premium ownership costs. This makes sense for expert riders who want BMW's absolute sport bike ceiling and have the skill to exploit it. It doesn't make sense for intermediate riders or anyone prioritizing comfort over lap times. The M1000RR is what you buy when you want a wind tunnel developed race replica that happens to be street legal, not when you want something easy to live with. Second on the list, Ducati Panigale V4S. Öhlins Smart EC 3.0 electronic suspension costs thousands to add as an aftermarket upgrade. Ducati includes it standard on the S, which either means it's essential for controlling 209 horsepower or they're very good at making you pay for things you might not need. The 1103cc Desmo Sedici Stradale 90-degree V4 makes 161 kilowatts at 12,750 RPM and 89.5 foot-pounds of torque at 11,250. What that feels like is terrifying. Open the throttle at 80 miles per hour in fourth gear, and the bike accelerates so hard it compresses time. The electronic suspension adjusts damping in real time based on throttle input, brake pressure, and lean angle. Does it actually improve control or just add complexity? When you're hard on the brakes before a tight corner and the suspension firms up to prevent dive, you notice. When you're commuting through traffic at 30 miles per hour, it's overkill. The V4 sound is what makes people ignore practical concerns. It doesn't sound like an inline 4. It screams at high revs and growls at low revs with character that makes you want to ride it even when you know you shouldn't. Ownership reality is brutal. The bike runs hot in traffic. Maintenance costs are premium tier. Desmo valve service intervals are tighter than most competitors. Insurance reflects the superbike classification and replacement cost. This makes sense if you want Ducati's flagship superbike with electronic Öhlins chassis control and you're willing to pay for the privilege of owning it. It doesn't make sense if you need practicality, comfort, or budget-friendly ownership. This is Ducati's Halo V4 statement, not their easiest bike to live with. Lastly, Honda CBR 1000RR, the Fireblade SP. Honda wins this list because the Fireblade SP has the most complete race-derived package you can buy from a manufacturer that spent decades proving reliability doesn't have to compromise performance. The 999.9cc inline 4 was developed for racing first and street use second, which shows in how the power delivers and how the chassis responds when you're pushing hard. The SP spec isn't cosmetic. You get Öhlins electronic suspension that adjusts damping based on riding conditions, premium Brembo brake calipers with better feel and more power, forged aluminum wheels that reduce unsprung weight, and lithium battery that cuts mass. These components make a measurable difference when you're riding at the limit. The electronics package includes track-level rider aids that actually work instead of interfering. Traction control, wheelie control, and engine braking management are sophisticated enough to trust when you're hard on the gas or brakes mid-corner. This is expensive. Ownership costs reflect flagship superbike status. The riding position is aggressive and unforgiving on long rides. Heat management in traffic is poor. Insurance will hurt. But this is Honda's best because it's the clearest expression of what Honda does when performance is the only priority. No compromises for daily commuting. No concessions for beginner riders. Just a superbike engineered to perform at the highest level Honda can achieve in production form. If you want a bike that's easier to live with, Honda makes the NC 750X and Africa Twin. If you want a bike that's more comfortable for touring, Honda makes the Goldwing. Every manufacturer on this list makes other bikes that might be smarter choices depending on what you need. The best bike is the one that matches how you actually ride, not the one that wins the rumors on streets or the spec sheets. If you disagree with any of these picks or think we missed something important, drop a comment and share this with your friends who need this list. Ride safe and see you in the next one.